This is a SnapEd New York video presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm Kim with Cornell Cooperative Extension. I work with our SnapEd program. Our job is to help you save time, save money, and eat healthy. And that's what we're going to do today by focusing on fruits and vegetables. Now, if you were with me last week, we did a sort of introduction into the different food groups on my plate. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into those fruits and vegetables. What we're going to be talking about is how to make sure you're getting enough, what exactly is enough, and how you can afford to do that all year long, even living in upstate New York, where our growing season is pretty short. So, did you know 1 in 10 people do not get enough fruits and vegetables in their diet? And think about what you eat throughout the day. Do you think that you're getting enough fruits and vegetables in your diet? All right, so using my plate here, you can see that you should make half of what you eat fruits and vegetables. So, all day long, half of what you're eating throughout the day should be fruits and vegetables. We like to say, make half your plate fruits and vegetables. So that means every time that you eat, try to think of a fruit or vegetable that you can add to it, at least one, anyways. So, what are the recommendations? The recommendations are 2 cups of fruit and then 2.5 cups of vegetables. So, let's talk about what that looks like. If we're talking about dark leafy greens, about 2 handfuls like this, if you measured this out, it would be probably about 2 cups, right? But we consider those 2 cups to actually be 1 cup of servings because dark leafy greens are light and airy. So you want to make sure that you're getting about 2 cups to equal 1 cup when it comes to dark leafy greens. Now, if you're going for carrots, 2 medium carrots are about 6 inches long is going to be about a cup. Now, obviously, you can measure other things out, like, if you chop up some peppers and onions, if you have some peas or something like that, you can measure what a cup or half a cup is. But if you have a whole fruit or vegetable, so, excuse me, something like a sweet potato or an apple, if it's about the size of your fist, then that's a cup. So keep that in mind for fruits and vegetables. So if it's an orange, a grapefruit, like I said, sweet potato, apple, pear, anything like that, if it's about the size of your fist, then you know you're getting 1 cup serving. So that's just something to keep in mind. Once you know what you're looking for, it's a little bit easier to make sure that you're getting enough throughout the day. Now, another thing that you want to think about is you want to vary your veggies. And the reason for that is because all those different colors have different nutrients. And that's why we say eat the rainbow, right? You want to eat the rainbow. You don't want to just be having those starchy vegetables like potatoes or carrots. You want to add in things like those dark leafy greens. You should be having those every day. Radishes, eggplant, different squashes. Think of those types of things too while you're planning out your day. I'm a big fan of beets. I think they add a lot of taste and flavor. Artichokes, maybe, think outside of the box. Brussels sprouts, things that you haven't tried before, and start adding those into your day. Broccoli, cauliflower, all of those things I just named are all different colors, right? So we want to be eating the rainbow and vary our veggies. Okay, now let's talk about why we need those fruits and vegetables and why we need to vary them. Fruits and vegetables have essential vitamins and minerals in them that our body cannot produce on their own. So if you're not getting them from your fruits and vegetables, then your body isn't getting a sufficient amount of vitamins and minerals. It will not produce them on their own. So that's why it's important to make sure that you're varying your veggies and that you're getting the right amount. They also have a lot of fiber in them, which helps with digestion. And when you have that fiber, it helps to absorb those nutrients too. And when you have what you need, you're going to feel healthy and energized. And most importantly, fruits and vegetables help decrease the risk for chronic diseases too. So think of things like a decreased risk of type 2 diabetes, of cancer, things like that, that we see in our society a lot these days, heart disease. Having enough fruits and vegetables is going to decrease your risk for a lot of those chronic diseases. All right. One other thing you may hear a lot is that fruits have too much sugar in them, or vegetables have too much carbohydrates. That sugar and carbohydrates that's in fruits and vegetables go along with that, the essential vitamins and minerals that you need. So don't try to avoid the fruits and vegetables because of the sugar and carbohydrates. Now, most of us do have to reduce the amount of sugar in our diet, but you want to look at other sources, not from fruit. So if you're having a lot of processed foods, if you're having a lot of desserts, even jarred foods like what we're going to talk about in a little bit is tomato sauce. You may find that that's got a lot of sugar in it. So those are the places that you want to replace your sugar, that table sugar that's added into our foods, not the sugar you're getting from fruit, and not the carbohydrates that you get from vegetables either. So don't try to avoid those. Make sure you're getting the 2 cups of fruit and 2.5 cups of vegetables, and that you're getting a variety of colors. Okay, I am going to start cooking here. So I have an Instant Pot because it makes it easy for me to do these demonstrations. I'm going to put it on saute, but if you don't have an Instant Pot, that's fine. You can do this in a crock pot. You can do it on the stove, in a Dutch oven, whatever you have on hand, or just a regular old pan would work too. All right, so I'm going to chop up my garlic here. I'm going to move the spinach so you can see what I'm doing. So with garlic, you just want to use the flat end of your knife here and smash it down. This is the fun part. My kids like to help me with this part. And when you smash it down like that, you'll see that the skin comes right off. It's easy to peel it off. I'm going to put a couple of cloves of garlic into this because I like a lot of garlic. If you don't like a lot of garlic and you just want a little for flavor, just go with 1 clove of garlic. Okay, so we got our peel off there. And then just going to put them together and give it a nice, I missed one piece. And then we're going to put it together and give it a nice chop here. And you can see that my left hand is curled up like a claw, protecting itself. And then the blade goes right down in front of that claw, and that keeps me from cutting my fingers, which is important. Once I have done that, I can do a rough chop like this. And that is important because you want to make sure you always have a sharp knife. If you don't have a sharp knife, it also makes it a little more dangerous, and you may be more likely to cut yourself. And the cut may be even worse if you do nick yourself. Okay, so we've talked about why we need to get enough fruits and vegetables. We've talked about, varying your veggies, but we do live in an area where we have a short growing season, and then it becomes more expensive during the wintertime to be getting those fruits and vegetables. So you're going to see throughout this recipe, I'm using a mix of fresh, frozen, and canned fruits and vegetables, because during the wintertime, you're going to find that those frozen and those cans are going to be good options when things are not in season. I'm going to put a little bit of oil down in my pan. That's just some heart-healthy olive oil. That's going to keep everything from sticking. And I'm going to throw that garlic that I just chopped in there. And then for the frozen part of this, I have some frozen peppers and onions. Now, green peppers and onions usually are inexpensive this time of year. You might be looking for other things too, like those mix bags that have a whole bunch of different vegetables in them, or broccoli, things that are harder to find this time of year and are more expensive. But I like to keep peppers and onions because here's one of my favorite tips for anybody that has a busy schedule. Frozen vegetables come chopped up, right? So they save so much time. So if you are not prepared and you have some leftover chicken in your refrigerator, or you have some beans, we're going to talk about some canned beans in just a minute here. You can throw together a stir fry with a bunch of frozen vegetables and make like a little sauce with it or something like that and have dinner ready in 10 minutes. So that's one thing that I like to keep in mind, not just to save money this time of year, but also that it is something that's easy because it's all cut up and ready to go. And it works great in stir fries. It works great in casseroles and soups like this. There's all different ways to use those frozen veggies. All right, I put a little bit of salt and pepper, and then we have peppers, onions, and the garlic in there. I have a little bit of fresh thyme that I'm going to chop up too. If you don't have fresh thyme, you could use dried thyme or just not use thyme in it at all. I think the garlic and the peppers and onions are enough to flavor this up. If you had some oregano, that would be another good one too in this. It'd be really great once you throw the tomato sauce in there. All right, so my seasonings are in there and we're just going to saute that for a couple of minutes here. And then the next thing that I'm going to put in is my fresh spinach. Now, while we're waiting for those to saute, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the canned and the frozen. So canned and frozen fruits and vegetables are canned and frozen at peak freshness. So they are just as nutritious as fresh is. Now, obviously, if you're making a salad or fresh piece of fruit or something like that, there's nothing that's going to replace that. But when you are cooking like this, it's always a good option to have those frozen and canned options. And like I said, if you're looking for speed, if you've got it in the freezer, it's going to come together pretty fast. And one thing I would also argue is during the winter time, especially, sometimes those frozen are going to be even more nutritious than what you find on the shelf. So let's just take an example of, say, like a strawberry, right? If you look on the shelf in the middle of winter, you're going to find strawberries that don't look that great. And that's because they're picked before they're at their peak so that they don't spoil because they need to be shipped from far away. And then because they're not looking as appealing, they might sit on the shelf a little bit longer too. But if you get those frozen strawberries are picked at peak freshness and then frozen. So that's one argument I have for checking out those frozen ones because they are frozen at peak freshness and they don't have that shelf life that some of the fruits and vegetables you see during the winter time do. Now, spinach generally you can find in season at different places. If you go to the farmer's market, they always have spinach all year long. And I don't find that the price goes up too much on the spinach during the winter. So I am going to be using some fresh spinach in there. And my sauteed peppers and onions are looking good here, so I'm going to throw that in. And like I said, most of us do not get enough dark leafy greens. So it's always good to add some in there. Okay, now I have a can of white beans. Now with canned vegetables, it's the same thing. They are picked at peak freshness, so they are just as nutritious as fresh. But they do have some sodium in them. Even when you get the low sodium ones, I always make sure I rinse everything really well to get as much of it off as possible. So I'm going to throw those in there. Now, beans are awesome. Let me tell you a little bit about beans. Beans can be considered a fruit or a vegetable because I'm just going to turn my heat down here. So beans are a fruit, they can be considered a vegetable or a protein. Because they have so many nutrients in them, they are similar to having a vegetable, right? They have the same micronutrient profile. But because they have so much protein in them, they also are considered a protein. And they're kind of a staple for vegetarians, so they're a great option for vegetarians. But even if you're not a vegetarian, they are inexpensive and they give you lots of nutrients. They're high in fiber, which is something that most Americans do not get enough of. And good fiber content also helps to reduce those chronic diseases that we talked about earlier. So that's something to keep in mind. And they also have some carbohydrates in them too. They're healthy carbohydrates. We need carbohydrates for energy in our body. So trying to just cut out carbohydrates does not work. I know a lot of people like to talk about that, net carbs and zero carbs. But those healthy carbohydrates you get from beans and some whole grains are healthy for your body. That's what gives our body the energy that we need. So beans are great because they have that rich source of protein. They're good in micronutrients as well, those essential vitamins and minerals that we talked about. They're high in fiber and they give us some carbohydrates too. So I always try to make sure that I'm incorporating beans into my meals a few times a week. They're a great way to do Meatless Monday if you are looking to do something like that. Or as food prices go up, which we're seeing right now, beans are going to be an inexpensive option that are still nourishing and give you enough protein too. All right, I'm going to give that one last stir. All my stuff is in here. My peppers, onions, it smells really good too. That's the hardest part about doing these virtually is you don't get to smell it. Okay, so for the cans here, we've talked about fresh, frozen, and canned beans, and now I have some canned tomatoes going in there. Canned tomatoes are a staple along with the beans because they add a lot of flavor to everything. They're really nutritious. And there's nothing like fresh tomatoes. I know that during the summertime, we all love that, but it's really hard to find good tomatoes this time of year. And like I said, oftentimes they're shipped from far away. They're kind of hard. They don't have the same flavor to them. So those canned tomatoes this time of year are a great option. And I don't buy pre-made tomato sauces. I know that I talked about this a little bit earlier. Those tomato sauces oftentimes have preservatives, they have added sugar, they have too much salt in them. This way I control how much salt and seasoning is going to be going in this. All right. I'm going to add some pepper because I think black pepper and crushed tomatoes are a great flavor together. Now, I noticed right before I started making this that I was out of oregano. I would normally throw about a tablespoon of oregano in here too, but I was out of oregano. But I would definitely add that in there if I had it. And I'm going to throw a little bit more salt. Altogether, I probably am going to put about 2-3 teaspoons of salt in there. And that's for the whole dish. So you add the salt and pepper to what you like. Add that oregano, maybe some basil. If you have Italian seasoning, that would be good in this too. Okay. Now, for our final thing that I'm going to throw in there, I have 2 cups of vegetable broth. Now, let me talk about that a little bit. You see these little garlic peels that I have right here. I save those and I save onion peels. I save carrot peels when I peel my carrots. I save the stems of different herbs that I may get. I save the stems of mushrooms and I put them all into a big freezer bag. And then once my freezer bag is full, I put them on a pot, fill it with water, and I boil all those kitchen scraps together. And that is my vegetable broth that I keep in my freezer. I freeze it into individual things. I have like these squares that I freeze it into. If you have ice cube trays, you could freeze it into that. And that way you have broth on hand all the time. And you can add different seasonings to it. Like when I made this one, I had all my kitchen scraps. I threw some fresh thyme in it, some salt and pepper. And then I use that for all of my soups. I cook my rice in it. If I get dried beans are great to have around too because they're less expensive than canned beans. Canned beans aren't that expensive, but dried beans are even less expensive. The only thing with dried beans is that you have to soak them and you have to cook them. So they take a little more time. So if you're trying to put something together fast like this, those canned beans are good to have on hand. But if I'm cooking beans from scratch, I do use my vegetable broth that I have in my freezer. Sometimes I'll even, if I cook a whole chicken, I'll save the bones of that chicken. Thanksgiving time, I save the neck of my turkey and the bones from that, and I'll add that to my broth too. And that adds some nice flavor as well. And that bone broth has a little bit of collagen in it, which is good for our bodies. It's a good source of protein. All right. So that is it. Now you can let this sit all day in a slow cooker. You can let it sit for a half hour to kind of blend all of those flavors together. I'm going to take a little bit out right now so you can see what it looks like. So you see we've got those crushed tomatoes in there and the spinach and white beans. The peppers and onions are in there too. So we have a variety of colors like we talked about. Let me see if I got that right. There we go. A variety of colors like we talked about. We have a good source of protein. Sometimes I like to add a grain to it. So I'll put some farro or also put some brown rice or maybe a whole wheat pasta, like the small pastas in there, if you want a little bit more carbohydrate in there too. I'm going to put a little bit more in there. And then I have some fresh basil that I'm going to put over the top of it. So that's just going to give me a little bit more flavor. That looks delicious. All right, well, thanks for coming in. And then next week, we are going to be cooking fish and talking more about protein and how to find healthy sources of protein. I know right now it's a crunch. We're all feeling it right now with inflation and everything else. So I'm going to be talking about how to get that protein that we need without busting our budgets. So stay tuned. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Be sure to go to snapedny.org for more tips, tricks, and recipes.